Today I'm going to be analyzing a game called Dreamfall: The Longest Journey, which is published by Funcom, published in 2007, and it is actually a sequel to an earlier game published also by Funcom called just The Longest Journey, which was released in 1999. Dreamfall appears to be an adventure slash role-playing slash point-and-click game, and the game opens up with a fairly extensive and lengthy cinematic establishing the story. We're giving some background information to some sort of man who's on a journey in some sort of Buddhist temple. The scene then cuts to the main character who's lying in a coma in some sort of bed in what appears to be the present time, and then the story cuts back to a certain amount of time before she was in this bed, and that's where the player has the first ability to take control of the character. The main character introduces as Zoe Castillo, and the first part of the game opens up in her bedroom as she's watching the television, again giving you some background information on the setting. Appears to be somewhere in the future, not really sure what country or what city. The game uses a third-person controller camera, which personally I often find to be a bit of a nuisance. I find it hard to control, to get used to moving around and looking. I was hoping more for a static screen where the player could point and click and move that player around. But the controls actually are fairly easy to get used to after a little while. Looking at Shell's definition of what makes up a game, I would like to point out a few things first. That this game's goal is fairly uncertain at the moment. In the beginning, it seems to be just kind of to find out where the story is going. We're giving very small or little information onto what is actually going on. I don't have a lot of background history. As you go along through the first few sequences, you start to get a little bit more background information as you speak to her father, and you're going around in this town speaking to some of Zoe's apparent friends, and you're given the option to speak to them and try and figure some things out. So, yeah, to begin with the game anyways, the only goal apparent so far is, okay, to further along the story. The whole feel of the game as well right away is very theatrical. It feels fairly linear in the first hour of play. You're given some choices as to whether or not you can respond to a little bit more aggressively with characters, or if you can be a bit more passive. I tend to choose the more passive, benevolent conversation options. Not a lot of conflict is given, again taking from Shell's definitions of what could possibly make a game. We're given an option to go to the gym, in which Zoe has a scheduled appointment, and here you can see some you're given a bit of a looks like it's some sort of tutorial on how to combat, and you're given the option to combat Zoe's teacher, which I failed the first time and then succeeded the second time, given the option again to continue training with the teacher, but it seems fairly simple with the combat, left click, right click. So I figured once I got the hang of that, I wouldn't need to train anymore. As far as choices go in the game, again, not a lot to begin with in the beginning. It seems like the only choices so far that we're given are in the conversations themselves. As far as playing, it looks like I had to go to the gym to begin with, and then you're not really given much other options. As far as challenges go in the game, not at all challenging for the first hour of play. In fact, the biggest challenge I had was trying to figure out where to go, as you're not really given a map. And the controls themselves were my first obstacle, really. There's not really a major tutorial on, how to move around. You're just assumed to automatically know by instinct where to go, what to click, and which is, again, the game itself was fairly well designed, at least to start with. It didn't take that long to figure out, okay, the eye obviously means I'm going to look at things, and when you come up with a cursor over, there's a blue sort of bounding boxes around certain objects that allow you to to click on them, and then you're getting an option of an eye or a hand, which is fairly self-explanatory. One thing I did notice right away with the game is the artwork seems to be quite nice. You notice there's a lot of rich colors around, vibrant colors. Character movements are fairly decent considering it was published in 2007. If I go back to, again, sort of what type of game this game is supposed to be, Kelois, if I'm pronouncing his name right, discusses 4 different types of play forms, and this game really seems to fall under mimicry, or mimesis, as he puts it, sort of a role-playing to imitate or pretend, as essentially you're just shoved right into the character's environment and personality and life. Aside from the cutscenes themselves, which were fairly descriptive again in their own sense, but they don't really give you any deep knowledge about what's going on in the character's life or what's been happening, and that's up to you to find out. So in a sense, we're really mimicking or going through this role play of Zoe's life.
Yeah, I'm running a bit late.
And so far, my intrigue has been kept fairly high. I do want to find out what's happening in the story. It's not until near the end of my first hour of play that things start to move a little bit faster here, while I'm got a mission from Zoe's ex-boyfriend to go talk to this scientist, and she's held behind a cage suddenly. And with this, I'd like to bridge into, again, Shell takes up different lenses that a game designer would put on to sort of gain perspective of what they're trying to do or look at in a game. One of the first lenses he mentions is the essential experience. And in this game, so far, I mean, the essential experience has essentially been Zoe's life. I mean, there's not really much else to experience so far aside from where she's, her friends, her family. Through the dialogue, you gain repeatedly, actually, this idea that she's lost, she's bored, she's apathetic, she doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life, and you're continually given these very foreshadowing clips of this video of this girl on the screen. Something about finding Sarah. Obviously, that's an extreme foreshadow. And so again, I'm assuming the game will continue on this way. A lot of foreshadowing. It's a very storytelling game so far. And as far as surprise, one of the second lenses that Shell speaks about. Not a lot of major surprises so far. I think, and I'm sure this actually probably touches on another lens, but focusing on surprise right now, when you come into the office here that you're supposed to pick up the package for Zoe's ex-boyfriend, you're put in this situation where you have to speak with this woman behind the desk, and right away you notice something's wrong. I feel like it was very well done. It's very subtle. As you're speaking to this supposed receptionist, but you realize right away something's not quite right. Not exactly sure why, but I definitely got that feeling right away. And then obviously at this point, somebody comes up on the screen, and you're given this choice as to whether or not you should let her know, or whether you should try and distract her. And so that actually surprised me as to this feeling of, I actually felt extremely immersed. Just for a quick second there, I felt like, okay, wow, I'm really here. What choice am I going to make? And you feel right away, I mean, obviously maybe because I've watched, 100,000 thriller movies, like, okay, I have to distract her. And I found that was kind of a nice surprise in my own experience, actually. And so hopefully this game continues to offer more surprises as I play along. And I definitely, so far after the first hour, I do want to continue playing along. I haven't played an adventure game in a long time. I'm a very big fan of the old, very static point-and-click adventure games. I'm not really huge into 3D ones, but this has definitely got my attention. It was actually quite fun right near the last maybe 20 minutes, right when the story started to pick up. I'm assuming, of course, the first 40 minutes of going around was definitely a lot of story building, and trying to get used to the controls, which I guess is necessary, but it wasn't a lot of fun. You're just, walking around going, okay, what's next? What's next? Lots of things I could look at. Didn't really care too much. Wanted to get, closer to the plot. Maybe to immerse myself more. So the first part of the game, I guess, felt necessary, but definitely the fun aspect started to build up a lot quicker. Near the last maybe about 20 minutes of about the hour that I played this game. Now, Shell's fourth lens that he speaks about, curiosity, and I think that's where this game has got me most hooked, because it definitely establishes a lot of feeling and mood throughout the cutscenes, the dialogue. I feel like that's something that they've worked really hard to create. Again, touching back on the experience, putting yourself into the life of Zoe. But yeah, essentially, very curious right away. I think there's a lot of innuendos in this game to life situations. I mean, even look at Zoe's situation herself in this game. She's dropped out of school. She's broken up with her boyfriend. She doesn't know what she wants to do. A lot of very real life situations that I can relate to very easily. Just looking at past experience that I've had, and made me thinking, okay, well, where's she going to go with this? Obviously, it's quite a heavy foreshadow for something to come and give her purpose in the game. But you can, I think, because you can relate to Zoe. I'm curious about her situation, curious how it's developed, and I start to get attached to her character. You want to know more about the world that she's living in, about her past, about her future. So, I mean, in that sense, I think so far out of the lenses I've talked about, this is maybe one of the strongest perspectives that have come forward so far. It's definitely a sense of curiosity, which of course adds to the fun. And hopefully I'll be again surprised in the future. But curiosity definitely a highlight so far in this game. One of the last lenses I'll take up in this analysis, again from Shell, is the lens of endogenous value.
Funny.
Basically referring to
Listen, Dad.
how I feel about the intrinsic items in the game, which again,
Not a party.
like I said, because so much attention has been focused on the story here, there's not really been a lot of interaction within in-world objects. The only thing so far I've really come into contact with so far in this game, as far as object goes, is the electronic ape that she has in the beginning, her cell phone, which seems like a very important part of Zoe's inventory. The only thing I've had in the inventory for the majority of my first hour of playthrough, but very, very handy. Mainly one thing, because you can go back and review previous conversations, which I think is a great component to this game. If you're wondering what a character said, maybe you're clicked through the dialogue too fast, you can always go back to the cell phone and look up those old conversations, which maybe could be of a great help later on in the game if you're solving more difficult puzzles. Other than that, not a lot. But it is an adventure game, and I am expecting to get a lot more items in the future. And so maybe, as the game goes on, that will prove to be a much more stronger component. Maybe I'll feel a lot more attachment to those objects. But so far, within the first hour, not a lot of objects. Only one object with fairly high importance. And so, yeah, that pretty much sums up a lot of the main points I wanted to talk about in this game. If I just want to do a quick summary of the game, like I said, obviously very cinematic, very theatrical game. Definitely feels like a lot more like a movie experience than a pure game experience right away. You're not right off the bat clicking, making tons of decisions, trying to figure things out. You're eased into the story through a lot of cutscenes and a lot of dialogue. And so on that hand, maybe wouldn't be the best game for people who just want to get right into the thick of the action. It's definitely more oriented towards people who like a good story, who like a lot of character development and story development. Great graphics, controls, so-so. potentially just because my preference towards 2D controls instead of the 3D third person. Just never been a huge fan of the 3D person controls in action games. Has got fairly standard goals. So far, find out the story, go talk to this person, go see if you can get this object. The conflict of the game has not really been revealed yet, so I'm not really sure, how I feel about that. I mean, it's obviously building. Definitely a game that wants you to invest time to figure that out. As far as the rules of the game, not entirely clear either yet. I mean, obviously you're bound to a fairly realistic simulation of this Zoe character's life, even though it's in the future. I can't fly, I can't shoot any special powers or anything like that. Seems to be a fairly normal person within a normal environment and what would maybe be considered normal in the future. So far I haven't found anything that indicates that I could lose the game. I can't really die right away. It doesn't seem like I can make any wrong choices. And so in that sense, the challenge has been fairly low. Be determined to see if it's got a lot more challenge later on. Definitely interactive in a dialogue way so far, this game. Not a lot of interactivity with my actual choices in the game so far. Fairly linear. Not a multiplayer game, so in this sense, it's just seems to be an experience between me and this game. And no other people aside from the artificial intelligence characters in the game. Aside from that, definitely enough to make me want to play further and try and figure out where the story goes. I would definitely recommend this game to anybody who's interested in a deeper story, deeper character development type of game.
I don't know what's going on with me.